Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee, and today is Sunday, September 7th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and, well, it was supposed to be a quiet week 2 of college football, and it was not. We got some major recruiting developments to discuss today. We're going to go to Tallahassee, talk some FSU momentum. We'll go to Gainesville, where the Gators recruits are reacting to a really shocking home loss against USF. And then, of course, we got to talk some Oklahoma and Oregon as well. But first, let's talk about the major developments that went down in the college football recruiting world. And we'll start with a top 10 quarterback surprise visit to LSU. From Jackson, Mississippi, he's a two-time South Carolina commitment. Yes, 2 times, nobody else, just South Carolina. But most recently, he made that commitment right here on the Rivals Recruits channel on July 18th. And we thought he was solidly committed to the Gamecocks. But Landon Duckworth, the number 8 ranked quarterback in America, showed up in the Bayou this weekend. Yes, LSU is hunting for a quarterback. And since there's no other uncommitted quarterbacks in the top 10, they're going to have to flip one. And it seems like Landon Duckworth is in their sights. Last year, remember, LSU lost Bryce Underwood, so putting a premium on the quarterback position in 2026. They still don't have one. They zeroed in on Bo Bentley. He committed to Oklahoma. But now, with LSU's history of quarterback development and maybe even a closer spot for Landon Duckworth to play, I mean, he's from Mississippi. It's a little bit closer to LSU than it is South Carolina. So we'll see what happens from here. But I think that was one of the major developments that went down this weekend. All right, USC, are they eyeing a 5-star flip? Folsom, California quarterback Ryder Lyons committed to BYU back in July, and it seemed like USC at the time backed off, and he shows up this weekend. And I know what a lot of you are saying. Well, Ryder Lyons was only there to watch his brother Walker play, and he's a tight end for USC. Well, was it a coincidence that he had a career game? And by career game, I mean he had 6 catches last year total. He had 2 this week with a touchdown. He had no touchdowns last year. Don't you think that maybe USC was using him to put on a show in front of Ryder Lyons? I mean, I'm trying to connect the dots here. But if we're really connecting the dots and doing the science, I look at Peyton Houston, right? Peyton Houston from the state of California. He's a 2027 quarterback. And he made a big announcement on Friday. He said that I'm going to make my commitment on September 15th. Well, for much of this cycle, Peyton Houston has been trending to USC, but now, just a day before his Oklahoma visit, he makes this announcement that he's committing in 10 days. So if Peyton Houston's leaving the state, is Ryder Lyons that option for USC in 2027? We know he's making that Mormon mission, so he's not really a 2026 recruit. He's more of a 2027 recruit. But USC fans, you tell me, is this nothing? Am I paying too much attention to Ryder Lyons showing up at USC on Saturday? All right, Oregon and Miami. There's a battle brewing from coast to coast between Oregon and Miami over 5-star edge Anthony Tank Jones. Yes, he's committed to Oregon, but he went down to Miami to watch the Canes whoop the Irish in week 1. He had a lot of great things to say. I mean, who wouldn't? It was an exciting game. The weather was great. Everything. It's Miami. What are you going to do? So Oregon, they're playing a little defense. They don't let this go, right? Anthony Tank Jones is from Alabama, but a week after visiting Miami, what do the Ducks staff do? They get Anthony back on campus for the game against Oklahoma State, and by all signs, he had a great time. I think Oregon had to do what they had to do. Look, if you're gonna recruit a kid all the way across the country, you got to make sure you have access to him. And how do you get access? You get him back on campus. So Oregon Ducks make a huge move right as Miami makes their push to flip Anthony Tank Jones. Oregon gets him back on campus to reassure him why he committed to the Ducks in the first place. All right. A major quarterback domino is set to fall. The number 8 ranked quarterback in America, he made a surprise announcement on Friday. Peyton Houston announced he's ready to commit. On September 15th, Evangel Christian Academy, 4-star quarterback Peyton Houston is going to announce his decision. And all offseason, he's been trending to the USC Trojans. But the timing of this all points to Oklahoma. Why? Because on Friday, he put out his commitment date, and on Saturday, he was in Norman for the game against Michigan. So my recruiting radar It now points to the Sooners. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. You guys let me know in the comments section below. But after Peyton Houston announces, half the quarterbacks in the 2027 top 10 will be off the board. Yes, there's 4 currently in the top 10 committed. Peyton Houston in just about 8 days will be 5. So these quarterbacks are falling fast. You guys talk to me. Those were the biggest recruiting developments in my world. What about you? Let me know. Comment section below. Let's talk a little FSU recruiting because Florida State is a top 10 program, at least in the AP poll. They are ranked at number 10. So we're going to talk about the impact of FSU's hot start on some of these top recruits. They are buzzing. But before we get into it, FSU fans, this is an exciting time. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. We love talking FSU recruiting, and it looks like we're going to be talking about them all season long. So jump on board and hit subscribe. All right. For now, we're going to talk FSU recruiting with Matt Lasser of War Chant. A couple flip targets were on campus this weekend, but we got to talk about Javian Cooper. He's an interesting one. 6'4", 295. He's from Melbourne, Florida, FSU's backyard, but he is currently committed to Syracuse. Are the Noles trying to circle back on this one?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I literally just talked to him 10 minutes ago to talk about the visit, and you get the sense that Florida State, since his official wasn't talking to him a whole lot, the communication had kind of fallen off a little bit, which happens at this time of the year when you have your class kind of filled out. But it was pretty clear. He goes, yeah, I think it's going to be more from now on. Even before the visit, it didn't seem like it was that much. But yeah, he said he's going to come back for the Miami game, and we're going to kind of see where this goes from there. I mean, obviously, I asked him, so is it the start of the season or like what is it? He goes, well, a little bit, but for the most part, it's that communication as well. So yeah, we're kind of waiting to see how this goes and how this progresses. But an offensive tackle is definitely a need for this class, or really a true offensive tackle, and they can get that with him, and you got to keep rolling with it. And he was there with his brother, who's also a recruit. He was talking to Herb Hand about some scheme stuff and what their FSU's plans are for this bye week coming up. And obviously, he got to see a good game. I don't know how much he really watched of it because it was such a blowout, but at least he got to see it, right?
Hey, it's better than losing. Florida State off to this 2-0 start. Javian Cooper, is there anybody else in competition with FSU to flip Cooper from Syracuse?
I get the sense UF might be there as well. He talked about him talking to Billy Napier a little bit on the phone. So I get the sense they're there. But obviously, after last night, who has all the momentum, right? It's a big deal that Florida State's 2-0, I think, for him, and that he gets to see this progression now. And again, a Miami game is going to be huge for this program and for recruiting going forward, I think.
Yeah, and we'll trust me, we're going to be talking about that one. But first, let's talk about FSU landed a commitment last night. Who was it? Tell us about it.
Yeah, Jamari Foreman. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't know much about him until yesterday when he committed. It kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously, when they take a commitment this early, normally it's pretty good. Then the kid is really good, right? DB really connects well with Evan Cooper. The main thing he was telling me about, well, first off, I asked, was like, so why FSU? And now we're back to getting the answers of why not FSU, which is nice. Hadn't heard that in 2 years. But he basically said that he liked how they really fit and how the scheme fits, how they play fast and physical. And Evan Cooper's a big part of that. They like their bond. He talks to him and Devin Rispus almost every day. So this is a guy that's kind of gone under the radar, but, now he's committed to Florida State and it's a big public thing. I wonder if you're going to see other programs start to sniff around a little bit and kind of see what's up there.
Yeah, from South Florida, 6 foot, 165, great measurables, young player. I'm sure we're going to be talking more about him in the future. But for now, we were talking about flips. Let's talk about the flip king himself, Isaiah Williams. He was back on campus. It was good to see him there. Is that 2 games in a row for Isaiah Williams at FSU?
Yeah, surprising, right? 2 games in a row. We're really getting the sense that this is done here and starting to get truly locked up. I know no one's going to agree with that until it's actually signed, just with the way that recruitment has gone. But from talking to his camp and people around him, you are starting to really get the feeling that this is it for him. And especially with the fact with him being hurt, that helps a little bit too. It's kind of slowed down the recruitment. And we get the sense, like, honestly, if I were to predict anything, he's going to be at every game this season. I think he said after the game, I think he was going to be at the Kent State. I would assume he's there for Miami as well, just how big that's going to be. So it's, as long as we keep seeing him coming to campus and not going anywhere else, we're becoming less and less worried about it. And there's not really much of a reason to be worried in my opinion, just from talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought, Florida State
No, it's crazy.
Like just another stop or layover on his final destination, on the way to his final destination. But here we are talking about Isaiah Williams locked in. And it does seem, we were talking to Chad Simmons, who talked to DQ Forkpa last week. Yep. Yeah, there's the Isaiah Williams timeline for those scored at home. But Chad Simmons said that DQ Forkpa really enjoyed hanging out with Isaiah Williams, and maybe one of the reasons right now that DQ Forkpa is trending to FSU is because of that time that he spent with Williams. So just crazy turn of events.
100%.
But that's what this season for FSU has been all about. That leads me to my next question. What's next, Matt? When do we hear about the Keyshawn Henderson visit? When do we hear that Derek Cooper is going to be in town? It seems like all this momentum is building, and if the wins continue, what do you think? What are the possibilities of this class? Let's talk game time. All of a sudden, the college and NFL seasons are upon us, but guess what? We need our tickets, and getting deals on last-minute tickets can be frustrating when all you want is to be there for the moment your team runs out onto the field, and the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets, experiences, and it only takes a few taps. The app's incredibly easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee, it means you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included. So what you see is what you pay. That's why I use the Game Time app. It's super simple, and it makes the experience of buying great seats a breeze. I've even seen NFL tickets on there as low as $100. So Game Time makes it easy to find and buy NFL tickets and tickets for every kind of event in your area. Also, the Game Time lowest price guarantee. It's where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference to guarantee you're getting the lowest price. All right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code INSIDESCOOP. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's INSIDESCOOP for 20% off.
Yeah, you sound like the message boards right now asking me about Keyshawn Henderson every day. I think they got their quarterback, but yeah, it's gonna be a fun week here during the bye week. I think we're gonna start seeing the visits to the Miami game start to stack up. Right, that's the next time. It's gonna be a huge atmosphere like that Alabama game. Could see Derek Cooper there. I talked to some people around him this week, and I know Wilt Bong's been saying it as well, that clearly FSU is still involved there. Man, back in when he camped like a year, 2 years ago, 2 summers ago, I remember him saying FSU was his number one school at that time. So he's always liked FSU. Obviously, that was a different staff, but it's still Mike Norvell and still Coach Yak at his position, so there's not much changes there. And I think they're always going to be involved, and Yak's always been good at keeping that communication. And with the UF loss last night, you start looking down the list there, right? You look at Carson Baker, who was doing the chomp with the Florida State backpack on last week, which made you kind of raise an eyebrow a little bit. And you go to Hezzy Kent, who officially visited Florida State, and we felt Florida State was in a good spot there too coming out of the visit. And I know for a fact they would still take another tight end in this class. So it's going to be interesting. I think right now you look at that UF list the most, and you're trying to figure out who maybe they circle back with there. But it's going to be the next week, 2 weeks leading up to the Miami game to see who starts scheduling those visits. They already have a few, like Jarius Rogers, but I mean, they're going to try to get some big dogs in here.
Yeah. All right, you caught me. I've been spending too much time on the War Chant message boards. You're right. All this winning, it got me.
It does.
You brought me back down. You made me, Josh. It's 1 week at a time. We got the bye week, and we got You're right. You're right. I've been reading the message boards way too much. All right, Matt Lasser of War Chant. Thanks for stopping by the Inside Scoop today.
Thank you, man.
Got to talk some Gator recruiting. Yes, Gator recruiting. USF stuns Florida fans in the swamp, 18-16. But what about the recruits? I want to know about the recruits. That's why I got national analyst Adam Gorney. He's been talking to him. We're going to break it all down. But first, Gator fans, do me a favor. We're here with you. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. We are still talking UF recruiting, and we're not stopping. All right, let's bring in Adam Gorney. And Gorney, what are the UF commits saying about this one?
Yeah, a lot of them are kind of holding fast here, holding firm with Billy Napier, and we might be at the point of no return again. And last
Again.
season, it looked like, if he had lost to LSU, he would have probably been gone. They kind of go on a run to finish the season, so people are getting excited again. They beat LIU in the opener, but then last night they looked terrible against USF, lose the game. And what really stings, Josh, is that after the game, USF coaches were DMing Florida commits and saying, "Hey, what did you think of that game?" I mean, that is really just cold-hearted recruiting right there. Probably knowing none of them are going to flip to USF, but just kind of turning the knife there. So, we're in an interesting situation here because Florida's schedule does not get much easier. This was sort of one of the cake games that they should have won and built up, and Billy Napier could have had some momentum. His demeanor after the game was kind of sorry too. I mean, so when people lose, Brian Kelly pounds the table, people scream and yell and stuff. And he was just like, "Yeah, we got to get this fixed." And everyone is like, "Yeah, no kidding. You got to get it fixed. You got to get it fixed fast." So sometimes there's like this point of no return with these coaches, that the next thing that goes wrong, somebody stumbles out of the gate, it's gonna look even worse for them. But recruits right now, at least as things stand, are sticking with Florida. Sometimes this thing could go either way. I mean, if Billy Napier gets fired, they bring in somebody big. Recruiting can hit their stride really fast. People still want to play at Florida. It's just that they don't want to be losing to USF at home.
Yeah, but at least UF is maintaining. I think that's probably the theme for now for UF fans, at least when it comes to recruiting, is maintain what we got and then maybe get to the end of the season just like last year and things just started turning around. But what if this Billy Napier buzz keeps up? Is that, the seat's getting hot, Adam. The seat is getting hot, and there's no denying that.
Yeah, totally hot. I mean, there's no denying it now. And the SEC schedule is upon them. They did great at the end of last season. But again, if they have a really disappointing start to the season, Billy Napier is on the hot seat again. And everyone around the program is like, "I'm tired of this guy." And Steve Spurrier goes on his podcast and say, "This isn't working." Gainesville is a very tricky place. People want championships or get the hell out. That's kind of like the standard there. They have recruits from Mississippi, from Texas, from everywhere in Florida. There are going to be other SEC teams coming in on these guys and not relenting. Even if he does, kind of has a nice finish to the season, there's a time that people say, "Okay, enough is enough, and we need to move on."
Yeah. So if you're on the UF staff, I mean, what can you do in a situation like this? Do you try to counter it? Do you just stick your head down and try to coach them up on the field and hope the wins do the talking? I mean, when the season starts to turn, what options does a coach have?
Yeah, and that's the tough part. You just got to keep going to work and making it work, and keeping your roster happy and making sure all of those things are happening. Now, if they go and they beat LSU in Baton Rouge this week, if they go down to Miami and beat them in 2 weeks,
that'd be huge.
If Texas comes in and they battle them, if they go to Texas A&M, they battle them. Just think of that. That's the next 4 weeks for Florida here. That's what Billy Napier is facing at 1-1. Going to LSU, going to Miami, hosting Texas, going to Texas A&M. That is brutal. But if they come out of that unscathed or look like they're a team that can kind of compete with those guys and maybe upset one or two of them, I think the USF loss is kind of put on the back burner for a little while. It's just if they could have been 2-0 and then got laced at LSU this weekend, kind of understandable. And then, you kind of compete with Miami. But that USF loss just kind of opens the floodgates of the Billy Napier haters to come out and be like, "All right, enough."
Yeah. And, in the state of Florida, beating your rival goes a long way. So if somehow UF only wins 7 games, but 2 of those wins are one over Miami and one over Florida State, UF fans kind of tend to look the other way a little bit and are satisfied to a degree.
Yeah, and that's the thing in the state, Josh. Like, Miami is trending up, Florida State way up after last season. USF now has Alex Golish. He's on every coaching carousel board for every open job that's coming up. And Scott Frost just took over there back at UCF. So Florida needs to kind of ride some momentum here. It's going to be kind of the lost stepchild, and that's what it looks like now after losing to USF at home.
All right, Gator fans, talk to Adam and I. You hear how recruits feel about this one, but how are you feeling, and how do you feel about Billy Napier? Do we see Billy Napier on the sidelines for the Gators in 2026? Let us know, comment section below. Let's talk some Oregon recruiting, because the Ducks, they have the number 3 ranked class in America, and so far, at least through 2 weeks, they have looked unstoppable on the field. I want to find out how that is impacting recruiting. I got Adam Gorney here. We're going to break it all down, but before we do, Oregon fans, exciting times. Make sure you hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. All right, bring in Adam Gorney. We're going to talk some QB recruiting, but first, a little Oregon defense, and not the way that you think I mean it. Tank Jones was back on campus, the elite edge out of the state of Alabama. There's a lot of buzz just about 6 days ago about his visit to Miami to watch them beat the Irish, and then all of a sudden he's back in Eugene. So Oregon literally playing defense on the recruiting trail here.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough. I mean, they're just going to have to outlast this through the fall.
Yeah.
Tank Jones goes to Miami a few weeks after his commitment to Oregon. I don't think Alabama and Auburn are going to back off of him. I do know some people close to the Alabama program that were very surprised at how this played out in the final days. It became pretty obvious that Oregon was going to be the pick in the last 48 hours or so. But they felt that Alabama had a very good shot at him. He's a Mobile kid. They recruit that area very well. He seemed like a homebody, like a kid that wanted to stay closer to home. His dad is apparently a huge Alabama fan. I was told their NIL deal was comparable, if not, in the ballpark. So everything sort of lined up for him to just go to Alabama. This could end up being one of those early commitments that kind of backs off as signing day gets closer, and you realize, man, getting from Mobile to Eugene, Oregon is not easy. That could reinforce his want to get out and kind of experience other things. Oregon is doing everything they can to keep him. And even if Mike Gundy wants to talk NIL money, I mean, NIL is going to be an easy factor for there. Phil Knight has, very deep pockets for that to happen. The defense is playing phenomenally well. Dan Lanning is a defensive guy with SEC roots. Tosh Lupoy is there. I mean, everything is lining up if he does want to end up at Oregon. But Miami's going to take a swing, and I just don't think the in-state schools are just going to let him walk out pretty easily.
Yeah, and, if you're an Oregon fan, it gets worrisome when they're taking these visits and not making it back to Oregon. So one visit to Miami, another visit to Auburn, one to Alabama, and you're like, well, but when he comes back to Eugene so quickly, it kind of negates whatever Miami was able to do on that trip down there. So we'll keep watching Tank Jones, like you said, not over, and also probably not his last visit to Eugene either. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Now let's talk a little quarterback recruiting, 2027 class. If my calculations are correct, 4 of the top 10 quarterbacks are committed already. Another one, Peyton Houston, number 8 quarterback in America, just announced he's going to make his commitment in about 8-9 days. So half of the quarterbacks in the top 10 will be committed. So when we look at Oregon quarterback recruiting, who's coming into focus for them?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean, we're just 2 or 3 games into their junior seasons, and half of the top 10 are already off the board, which just pushes up that timetable even quicker. And Oregon is doing something very interesting here. So Keegan Croucher is going to definitely be one of their top targets. He's a kid from New England, who's playing in New England, from New York. Penn State is going to be involved, Oregon, Ole Miss. Those 3 are very involved. So if Oregon has a very good feeling on him, I think they take Croucher and call it a day. But what's interesting here, and maybe the first time I've heard this, is that Dan Lanning and Will Stein, the offensive coordinator there, told Dane Weber down here in Temecula that they're going to come see him when he plays Bryson Beaver, the Oregon 2026 quarterback commit. And based on that game, they're going to determine whether they want to offer him or not. And I talked to Weber and I was like, well, why don't you just talk to your coach and kind of set you up for greatness in that game? Every play you like should be the play called. And he kind of laughed it off and said that winning was more important. But hey, maybe that offer might be most important over the long haul. So I kind of credit Dan Lanning and Will Stein for being that upfront with Dane Weber and saying, look, you play great in that game. We like you. We're going to offer you. If not, we're going to move on to somebody else. And Weber appreciated it as well, because recruiting could be stringing along as much as anything else and come visit and throw for us at camp and all those other things. And Weber seems pumped up for that game in October. And I think it's going to be a very interesting situation to see how it plays out.
All right, yeah, the QB dominoes are falling. Let's stay in the state of Cal. Let's stay in the 2027 class and on the West Coast. When it comes to California recruiting, the Ducks have always done well in recent memory, done pretty well. But now with this USC resurgence, are the Ducks going to still be able to recruit Cali very strongly in the 2027 cycle?
Yes, yes, and now it used to be all USC. Pete Carroll used to call in, beckon in about 25 of the best players in Los Angeles, and they'd all show up and be excited and come in and commit and play for Pete Carroll. And then USC went through a massive drought of years of just not doing anything. And in that void came Oregon with all their money and their flash and their glitz and glamour and their wins and all of that stuff, and came in and landed a lot of the elite players from California. You just go down the list. Just think of defensive end. Kayvon Thibodeau goes up there.
Yeah.
Mateo goes up there. I mean, down the line, you could just go down the list of players that were phenomenal from Southern California that ended up at Oregon. Now that USC has a much more aggressive recruiting staff, they're winning again. And, they've played some, patsies here. But it'll get interesting once they get into the Big Ten season. If they could more than hold their own, if they can continue to build that, their recruiting department is phenomenal. But that does not mean Oregon's, going to give up. A lot of the players have already established great relationships with those guys. They have people from Southern California on the staff, and Rashad Wadood and some other guys. They love Dan Lanning, the youth of that staff. So I think all of that kind of plays in together. Now, USC has countered that by saying you could have youth and a lot of guys that potentially will be head coaches one day. We're going to bring in guys that coached Aaron Donald, and we're going to bring in Rob Ryan, and we're going to bring an NFL experience to an NFL city with the biggest NIL budget you could possibly imagine. And so I think that's going to be the great, counterpoint that Oregon and USC meet on the recruiting trail of who wins out for which players.
All right. So obviously Oregon dominates Oklahoma State over the weekend in dominating fashion. I mean, Dan Lanning really put it to him, but it got me thinking, did Mike Gundy inadvertently maybe help Oregon on the recruiting trail? I mean, calling Oregon the kings of NIL, that sounds like a recruiting pitch to me.
Yeah.
For Oregon.
Yeah. And even after the game, Gundy said it. He was like, my comments weren't basically taken out of context, but I was sort of crediting them. I was giving them a compliment about
right.
their ability to recruit. And I'm sure that there is some, hard jealousies there. I mean, you cannot get NIL money in Stillwater like you can with Nike money in Oregon. It's just not the same. So Oklahoma State has some money, but yeah, I think inadvertently or advertently, I don't know what it was, but it was certainly like, hey, we might be going out there to get our butts kicked this week, but they got more money than us. So what do you want me to do? Sort of thing. So yeah, it absolutely helped. And when kids hear, they're the kings of NIL, they already knew it because they're already getting all of those deals put into place, and they see, you just take a trip through that campus and it's just like, the roads are paved in gold. It's just an absolutely gorgeous place. It's probably one of the big reasons why Dan Lanning stayed there, because he saw the way that college football was trending. He sees issues in the Southeast, possibly with these smaller college towns not being able to pool their money as much. And he's been able to do it and will continue to be able to do it. And it's definitely something that Gundy saw heading into this week. Like, man, we are stepping into a situation where, the New York Yankees are playing like the Tampa Bay Devil Rays AAA team here.
Yeah, but I mean, Boone Pickens to Phil Knight is more like the Boston Red Sox to the New York Yankees, not exactly the Devil Rays to the Yankees. You know what I mean? I mean, let's not act like Oklahoma State didn't have a private donor funneling millions and millions of dollars of his own to that program as well. So, I know it probably pales in comparison, but it's not that far off.
Hey, that's that oil money at Texas A&M speaks pretty loudly too. Right. So yeah, it's certainly in Stillwater, but it just maybe doesn't feel like it. Let's say.
All right, Oregon fans got to be feeling good 2 weeks into the season. Talk to us. What do you think about recruiting? Who is your top 2027 quarterback? Put it in the comment section below. We got to talk some Oklahoma recruiting. The Sooners' big win over Michigan has top recruits buzzing. It's been the biggest recruiting weekend in years for Oklahoma. We got Josh McCuistion here from Sooner Scoop. We're going to break it all down. But first, OU fans, do me a favor. Jump on board and hit subscribe because we want to talk Sooner recruiting all season long. We're going to do that. All right, let's bring in Josh McCuistion. And big win, much needed, and it's going to help in recruiting. And there was a big announcement that went down right before the weekend. Quarterback Peyton Houston, one of the top quarterbacks in the 2027 cycle out of California, announced that he's going to be making a commitment on September 15th. That was just 10 days away from his visit to Oklahoma. So what does this mean for the Sooners?
This felt like, to me, really a kind of a two-horse race for a while between USC and Oklahoma. And I know the kind of common thinking had been that it was USC. And like talking to people, and obviously his connection to Booby Feaster, that was, I think, a big part of the math for a lot of people. But the more this gets closer, I mean, it just kind of feels like him going to Oklahoma this weekend, just before he announces, just before I guess you would say he announces his announcement, and then just a little over a week before his actual announcement, that seems pretty positive for Oklahoma. I mean, based on a long time in doing this, that's not usually something that's done just kind of willy-nilly. So I think that is a really good sign for Oklahoma. And the early response from people I've talked to that were around him this weekend, it sounded like things went well. So, I don't have any reason to think that this would have turned him away. And, I know there's already been some predictions that have changed, but I think Oklahoma's in really good shape with Peyton Houston right now.
Certainly feels that way. I mean, I don't know, maybe it was a coincidence for him to announce that right before the visit, but hearing all of the national insiders kind of move away from that position where USC was the leader, it's got to be good news for Oklahoma, especially getting that win. So let's talk about, just generally speaking, Oklahoma's had some big visit weekends, but it makes a big difference when you win that home game with all these recruits on campus. So generally speaking, what was the response from recruits last night?
Oh, it's been overwhelming. I mean, everybody I've talked to, and Josh, one of the things you can always tell is like when you're, obviously late kick last night, guys were still in the locker room until, well into 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, that kind of thing. You were talking to guys and they're chatty last night. Like everybody's ready to talk, ready to get questions. And like, that's always kind of a tell, you know how this goes. And so I think that was a really good sign, because the visit weekend itself ended up being a bigger thing, but like it felt kind of similar to Tennessee last year, where OU's first game in the SEC, and there was all this hype and excitement. And again, game day was there; it was a big deal, but OU didn't really deliver. And last night, okay, not only did John Mateer have some big moments, the defense looked great. So you talk to these guys, and everybody is just over the moon about what they saw, and the crowd atmosphere was. At OU can sometimes be a little up and down, but from, everybody I've talked to, it sounds like it was just perfect last night and everybody was kind of blown away.
So when it comes to recruiting, who do you think this impacts the most? I mean, it's got to be the 2027 cycle, right? And getting guys like a Cooper Hackett, Cooper Witten, Joshua Dobson, obviously Peyton Houston. I mean, what does this do for Oklahoma recruiting moving forward with these big names?
Well, it's really funny that Peyton Houston was there last night, because it reminds me of something he and I talked about maybe a month ago. And he kind of talked about, we were discussing Bo Bentley's decision and how Bo kind of had to take Oklahoma on faith when he made his commitment. Like, I think this is going to work, and I like Ben Arbuckle, and I like Oklahoma. But I was like, for you, Peyton, you get the advantage of getting to watch it and see if it's actually going to be anything. And he talked about that, how meaningful that was to him, that he really gets to take a step back, doesn't have to rush anything, and then to make that announcement, go to Norman. I mean, it feels like dominoes are kind of falling in that direction, but there's no question. You look at it, Oklahoma had one uncommitted player, to my knowledge, the 2026 class that was on campus, and he doesn't currently hold an offer. So this is a absolute 2027 and 2028 play, where 2028 is so far down the road, who knows what it really means. So yeah, I mean, you look at, the 27 group that's there, you got Jalen Brewster on campus, who I saw a couple of weeks ago, and it's just unbelievable. I'm not as highly as we've got him ranked. I still don't know if everybody appreciates how good that guy is. Cooper Witten, I think probably the one that OU fans have a lot of interest in is Cooper Hackett. Just days after committing to Texas Tech, makes a trip down to Norman. I know OU had a lot planned for him. I haven't had a chance to talk with him yet, but they really wanted to sit down, talk with him, his mother, and really kind of lay out what their plan is for him. But I don't think Oklahoma blinked for a second about his decision. So this is OU wanted this to be the weekend that spurred what they want 2027 to be, with a great in-state class, a lot of big-time talent in Dallas.
Yeah.
They think that can be a special class if the chips can fall right for them.
Well, it was an exciting game, and I think it goes a long way for the 2028 class. I mean, imagine you're a, 14, 15-year-old. You haven't been to many big games yet. Those are impressionable years, being 14, 15 years old. I know 2028 sounds like a far way out, but it's really not when it comes down to recruiting. So, I think it was a big night, big win for Oklahoma. Oklahoma fans, talk to Josh and I. How are we feeling? Not just about the season, but also recruiting. Put it in the comment section below.